I could make one change to how they are funded or promoted, what would it be and why? And I would just say that it would be nice if arts programs were funded dollar per dollar the same as sports programs. And there's so many different reasons as to why one school over here might give more money to the sports programs, and one school over here might give more money to the arts programs. Those schools are few and far between, but we do. In my experience, it does feel like more attention, more focus, and more funding goes towards these sports programs. And of course, if that's what a school wants to choose to do, fine, that's their prerogative. But I think that does a disservice to the students, and I think that does a disservice to the community. Whereas if you had equal dollar per dollar funding, then you would have a more level playing ground. And I think having the more level playing ground for the students is what will really let them come to realize where they fit into it all. Because if they enter into a sports program that is highly funded, that is highly more valued by a school's administration, by the community around it, then they may be joining that program, that sports program, for the community benefits, not necessarily because they like the sports themselves. Same thing with theater, same thing with any of the arts programs. If there's a culture that's already there that values that community, that values that aspect of education, then they're going to go there and be supported. They're going to be welcomed into that community. But if you have a student who's not an athlete, who goes to a school and then sees how much more attention that the sports programs gets, that the athletic department gets, how much more attention, how much more funding, how much more reverence from the community that aspect gets than the arts program, then that student, and again, this is my experience, this is a pretty common experience, that students like that will feel disenfranchised and will further, I guess, isolate themselves or seclude themselves from the overall education experience.
Because of the push with larger universities and their sports programs, they get a lot of funding from alumni and from the community because it's something that they can do for such a long period of time. An entire football season is months, and you're constantly seeing them over and over and over again. Versus in the arts, particularly in theater, we work tirelessly semester by semester, but our final product of a production is typically only 3 to 4 nights. And so it can be hard to be seen by the community and by those that are able to assist with funding, just because we have a much smaller time frame to present all that we've worked on.
So how do you feel about the current balance between funding for sports and arts programs in the schools? I think we do well on arts education in our local area. But it's the clubs and the things that surround the arts that become pretty difficult. I know for our sports teams, they have booster groups. Their parents get involved and raise money to help make sure the team has the things they need. And we don't have that kind of thing, so to speak, at all levels of our school system. Some of our schools perform in their concerts and things like that in regular clothes or non choir or non dress up kind of stuff, where some of the other schools have the money individually to purchase those kind of things, and some schools don't. And I think that shows a real discrepancy within the arts program, that we don't have something set up to help put some real focus on making sure that they feel like that they're presentable and they're just as good as the next student that's going up on the stage. And So I think there's some discrepancy there, but most of that funding doesn't really come through the school system. It comes through booster groups that raise the money, and it's easier to get families involved in sports clubs and ideas than it is to get them involved in art things like choir or those sort of things. We have band uniforms, but we don't necessarily have those kind of things for choir and other entities.
How do you feel about the current balance between funding for sports and arts programs in the schools?
I feel that there's a great deal of disparity in the funding of the arts and in sports. For example, in our community many years ago, I noticed that the kids in band were having to do a lot of their own fundraising. And it seems to me, and I may be wrong about this, but it seems to me that the sports kids were getting a lot of funding from alumni organizations and things like that.
If you could make one change to how sports and arts are funded or promoted, what would it be and why?
I would definitely promote music, art, and band more, because high school is all about the sports, and I think that's kind of soul crushing for all of our kids who spend hours on a painting or hours practicing their trumpet. It's just how many people will get to see them, and how many times will they get to perform.
Do you believe that students who are interested in the arts are given the same opportunities as those interested in sports?
No, I think when you look at, I'm thinking opportunities as far as like after graduation and stuff. I know a lot of people who are in sports get a lot of opportunities for scholarships and stuff to go to schools, and I feel like the people in arts programs don't get as much as of those opportunities.
I don't believe so, because I work with a lot of students who are here rehearsing and getting sets ready, getting lighting ready, getting their costumes ready. They're putting in as many hours, if not more hours, than athletes, and the recognition they receive is far less. The scholarship opportunities are far less. Once our students go past the community college level, if they go to the university level, MTSU being a prime example as an institution that many of our students transfer to, those students are doing a full day of classes, just like athletes, and then they are rehearsing from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m., just like athletes. They're putting in weekends, they're putting in countless production hours, and all for a very small run of a show, 2 weekends maybe, but the scholarship opportunities are few and far between. You have to be at the utmost, topmost of your game to be able to have enough backing from your professors who have seen all the effort you've put in, and then hoping beyond hope that of the 3 scholarships that are available, that you might get one, even though 100 people have applied for them. There are not as many scholarship opportunities, and that's something that we should fix.
How has the emphasis on sports affected the arts program in your community or school?
Well, with football, of course, the band's always there. When I think of choir and stuff, I don't think choir gets enough recognition. I think, and it's just like a theater at the high school, they have to have a play for anyone to come in and see them. It's just not, I guess it's just not an every week thing. Coaches don't, they get together and decide when they're going to have their meetings or their games with every other person in their district, whereas the arts, they just have to decide what day will they do it. It's not like there's a competition unless the 3 band competitions that our band goes to. So I think it's just the fact that it's the planning.
I think it's has a lot to do with the communities in which you live and what kind of emphasis there are in those communities. One might get more attention than the other, and it's according to the emphasis that's put on it by the individuals that are part of it. So definitely you see a lot about sports. You might not see as much about the arts. Some people consider all entertainment to be the arts. When you consider that, well, country music stars and pop stars and all of those kind of things, the movie world, all of that is much more prevalent than ball teams and things of that nature. I mean, so on that scale, the arts might overshadow, but when you're talking about in your communities and stuff, it really has a lot to do with how your community puts emphasis on the things they put emphasis on.
How has the emphasis on sports affected the arts program in your community or school?
I think that a lot of students who are in the art program don't get a lot of the recognition that they deserve for their hard work. They put in a lot of hard work, just like people in sports do. So I think that they're just not getting the recognition they deserve.
How has the emphasis on sports affected the arts programs in your community or the schools?
I feel like if you have kids you don't have kids that are as interested in the arts programs because there's not as much encouragement to pursue those things. In our community, for example, you don't see orchestras or private, you don't see a lot of students taking individual piano lessons and things like that in the mainstream schools. We have a school here called Web School, and the kids get private instruction in those kind of niche specialty schools, but here you don't see a lot of that. So you have very limited exposure. You have chorus and band, it seems like, and that's pretty much all they're limited to. Whereas with the sports, I feel like they have a lot of options and a lot of opportunities. Like it causes kids who are less likely to be interested in sports to have the opportunities that the kids with the sports emphasis has.
The question prompted to me was, what do you think the benefit of arts programming is? And I could talk about this all day. One thing that we really have in our modern student base is a lot of mental health issues, and we just live in a really fast-paced world. And theater is an ancient way for us to reconnect to our bodies, to reconnect to each other, and to build empathy. One of my favorite books in the last couple of years that's come out is The Body Keeps the Score. And there's an entire final chapter about how good theater is for our mental health and to help us feel a sense of togetherness in the age of alienation. So I really wholeheartedly believe that theater is a way for us to reconnect to our community and to have problem-solving skills. Theater, we face real-world problems and we solve them together. And we learn real skills like painting and sewing, things that people can use for the rest of their life, just being homeowners or dressing themselves in the morning. So I think that theater really helps build confidence. My son has decided to be in his first play, and I'm so excited to see him really stand in front of a crowd and command an audience and feel his power. I think a lot of young adults spend a lot of time in seclusion and don't always embrace the power that they have. And I love watching the transformation that I see my students undergo coming into the theater and then building that confidence in their voice by the time they leave.
Well, I think the benefits of having a strong arts program in the schools develops a well-rounded person. That they get the opportunity to really participate and express themselves in ways that they couldn't otherwise. And if you've got that strong arts emphasis, music is math. And so if you ever think about it, the calculations and the way that you do math, that's the same way that you calculate music and how things work. And so it is, they do go very hand in hand.
What do you think are the benefits of having a strong arts program in schools? So my answer to that is with arts program in schools and with arts education, one of the things that jumps out of me is storytelling. And whether it's again with my background being in theater, if we're looking at a play that's been written over 2,000 years ago, written in ancient Greece, or if we're reading a play by William Shakespeare, these plays have lasted as long as they have, and are still being done now, because for some reason or another, people and cultures find meaning in these stories, and they find some sort of fulfillment. I don't know what that might be, but I know if it's true for one art form, then it's got to be true for many others as well. So songwriting, for the visual arts, for the literary arts, these things, again, through some form or fashion, provide some form of meaning to the audience, and not just to the audience, but for the artists themselves. And in the context of education in schools and in art programs, because the arts are so ingrained in culture, to me it only makes sense that as we acclimate students to quote unquote the real world, it only makes sense to have equal support of the arts programs in schools just as much as we do sports programs. I don't think one should be valued over the other. I think they should be treated equally and equally funded.
What do you think are the benefits of having a strong arts program in schools?
Oh my goodness, for creativity, for the students to just create, whether it's music or actually a painting or something, it just increases creativity. Creativity increases problem solving.
What do you think are the benefits of having a strong arts program in schools?
I think it gives all students the opportunity to do something that they love and to achieve. We have a ton of students who are very art focused, and I think having a strong art program is wonderful for those kids to be able to hone their skills and to do what they love. People who play sports do what they love, and I think that people who are more in the arts field should have that opportunity as well.
What can a community do to support their arts programming? We know, especially here in the South, a lot of money goes to football, and that those have ticket sales and is able to be lucrative because of the longstanding traditions. But theater is so important to help students find their voice, feel a sense of community and connectedness to each other and to their power. But when it comes to what can a community do, I think there's a lot of really simple things, but the number one thing is just go see the plays and support the students. There's nothing worse than a student feeling like they've worked so hard on something and then none of their friends or family from church or from the community come and support them.
How do you think the community can better support both sports and art programs equally?
Show up for events, show up for this when the school puts stuff on. Just show up and show support just like everyone does for sporting events.
How do you think the community can better support both sports and arts programs equally?
I feel like there should be more balance. The alumni organizations in a lot of the schools that I've been around put just an extremely large amount of money into the sports programs and the scholarships. I think that there could be better opportunities for private scholarships for kids who are, say, learning to play a musical instrument. Because, for example, my daughter, when she went to Lee University, when she auditioned as a singer, they also said, bring your musical instrument because we need players in our orchestra. And I think that the schools could support those efforts by providing instruction in, say, musical instruments individually rather than just the time that they get in the typical band classes. And the same thing with, now there is, I feel like around here, there is a pretty good supporting community outside of the schools in the performing arts, but I think there could be more emphasis on more performing arts. I think there could be better funding. I don't know how they would get that, but I'm sure that if they can find a way to fund football and basketball, that I'm sure that they can find a way to fund music programs that are more inclusive of kids, not just in band and chorus, without the kids having to go out and sell items just to pay for the uniforms and instrument rentals. And this would be especially effective reaching out to kids in poorer sectors who can't afford to pay for their own band uniform or their own musical instrument.
Can you share any personal experiences where you felt the arts were overshadowed by sports?
My son had to choose between football and music. Luckily, he chose well. He chose music, and he played for Pride of the Southland. So that was very personal for me. But it's because they're both happened at the same time, and freshman year they can do it. After that, no.
Can you share any personal experiences where you felt the arts were overshadowed by sports?
I do know that with a lot of clubs here at school, a lot of times if it comes down to a sports practice or attending the club, they will end up going to the sports practice. So I think a lot of times the sports does overshadow.
Can you share any personal experiences where you felt the arts were overshadowed by sports?
Very much so. In my particular case, and why I became a music teacher in the first place, you see parents coming to me all the time saying they need their kids in some form of music, and the only thing they have in primary school is a very basic music class. They may be taught to play a percussion instrument or a recorder, or they sit down and they listen to music that's presented to them in class. But beyond that, they don't get taught how to play an instrument or anything like that. Then when you get into high school, as I said, there's band and there's chorus, and that's really just about it. And in my personal experience as a person with a visual impairment, obviously I'm not going to play football or basketball, so I am going to gravitate more towards artistic programs, and there just weren't that many.
What impact do you think this imbalance has on students and people who are passionate about the arts?
It causes a lot of discouragement on the part of, I've been talking a lot about music because that is what I do, but the kids especially in the visual arts, I have kids that come in here that take piano lessons, and they're creative kids, and they do things like painting and sculpture and stuff like that. That stuff is just not encouraged strongly enough, and sometimes in order to find the educational opportunities to go to college, they give up on these pursuits, these musical and artistic pursuits, because they need to go to school, they need to go to college, they need funding for that, and the programs are just not encouraged here, and you find a lot of kids and their musical talents just falling by the wayside. I've seen kids that are extremely talented, and they have to give it up to go do something else. Now, sometimes is a hobby for them, but I have some kids that are very passionate about it, and they can't continue to pursue it because there's no pathway for them for their future. It's just not encouraged.
How do you think the school administration could improve the visibility and support of the arts programs?
I think if we had more arts days, if we had more days where get your kid interested in art. Whether it's music, art, or band, I think if we started earlier in elementary school, it'd be very helpful.
Hey guys, sorry about the long video. I just wanted to make this video because I think it's really important for us to hear what our community thinks. And I hoped that if you heard some of the struggles that we go through as artists, you might support us a little more, which is what we really need right now, because every day the arts get a little more hidden. I hoped that you could help us keep it alive because it is so important to so many people. And I just wanted to thank you for watching and tell you, go support a local artist.